All right, we are live and we are still chomping at the bit here with the black blood of creativity. Oh. This is COFOH Live Undead. I am your host, Daniel, and I'm joined by the author extraordinaire, Mike Barrett. Wow!
You write something on my face?
Mike, how are you, sir?
Great.
Good. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I love your backdrop. It's you've got so many different books that you've worked on over the years.
There's a bunch.
Yeah, it's just a nice, healthy stack, right? Mike, you're really accomplished writer, Eisner Award winner. You've created such characters as Badger, Nexus with some of your collaborators, and you're putting out novel after novel. Tell us a little bit about where you come from and how you got into writing.
When I was a boy, I bought a paperback in a cigar store in Mitchell, South Dakota. It was The Deep Blue Goodbye by John D. MacDonald. I'm standing on the sidewalk and I'm looking at this book. I think it was 35 cents new.
Yeah.
That's what they cost in that day. And I said, well, this guy's not writing this for his health. He's doing this for a living. That's what I want to do. So the seed was planted.
Nice.
And I also fell in love with Uncle Scrooge comics by Carl Barks,
Cool.
which incited my love of comics. I always wanted to just tell stories, but it took me 30 years to learn how to write a novel because I'm a slow learner. I was lucky in that we were in the right place at the right time with Nexus to get it published. I was working at an insurance company when a friend at a newspaper called me and said, hey, there's some guy down here showing us his art, and you should take a look at it. And so he gave me Steve Root's phone number, and I called him up. He was living at the YMCA.
Okay. Wow.
And we met at the student union. He opened his portfolio, and I was blown away. I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to do comics, but I can't write. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to do comics, but I can't draw. And at the time, Capital City Distribution, which was the second largest comic book distributor in the world at the time, a huge multi-million-dollar company, decided they wanted to launch their own comics line.
Okay.
So I went home and I brainstormed Nexus, and I drew the first 12 pages out by hand, which is how I wrote comics for 20 years.
No kidding.
I draw each page out by hand. My art, it's not very good, but it's good enough that people look at it and know exactly what's going on. And editors and artists loved it. And a bunch of famous writers used the same method, like Archie Goodwin. That's how he wrote.
Right.
And I think Chuck Dixon has written comics like that.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
So, and I gave the 12 pages to dude, and he went home, penciled, inked, and lettered them, and we brought them back, and they looked them over and said, yeah, give us more. And so we were off and running.
Nice. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And that segued into other opportunities like Punisher. And,
because once Nexus and Badger got out there, I started getting calls. Carl Potts called me and asked me to write the Punisher because he'd read Badger and he liked it.
Sweet.
And my editor at first, Mike Gold, moved to DC, and he brought me on board to write The Flash. So I started writing for DC as well. In fact, I wrote for every major publisher at the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. But what's it like? Kind of jumping back and forth between characters like the Punisher and the Flash. I'd imagine they weren't at the same time, but I mean, two differently, drastic tones and genres, really.
Well, you have to approach each one. There are different milieus, different themes. The beauty of the Punisher was, to me, that I wrote him for 3 years as a straight crime comic.
Okay.
There were no superheroes. There were no spaceships. There was no magic.
Yeah.
It was Frank against the mob, or drug gangs, or crazy preachers, or Wall Street bankers, and that's why it worked for me.
Yeah.
And we were talking before the show went on. I said that the type of movie I enjoy is a movie I believe could actually happen, that rings
Right.
of reality, that rings true. The people talk the way people talk, and events unfold in a way that you accept them and say that could happen. The Flash, of course, was a completely different milieu. He's a superhero.
Yeah.
And my big insight was that Wally West burned off enormous calories racing around the world. And in order to do that and not drop dead from exhaustion, he had to eat constantly. So he was having these huge meals, but he never gained an ounce.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the ultimate cardio experience, right?
Right. We all dream of that. If only we could be like Wally.
Oh, I know. My love handles scream for that. Yeah, wow, that's pretty fantastic. Kind of going back, before Punisher and Flash, you mentioned the Badger, and that came right after Nexus, correct? How did Badger really come about? What was the germ for that?
That's a funny story. I saw Jeff Butler's art on a poster downtown. I called him up. I said, Jeff, do you want to do comics? He said, yeah. What do you want to draw? He says, I want to draw druids.
Wow.
So I wrote this 10-page story about a cantankerous druid in 6th century Wales who so irritated his fellow druids that they took up a collection and hired the Vikings to knock him out and drop him off the edge of the earth. But of course, they never got to the edge of the earth. They got to Wisconsin eventually before they buried him. So we took that in to show to the boys, and Milton Greep was the publisher, and Milton says, nah, people don't want to read about druids. They want a costume crime fighter. And my first thought was, why would anybody put on a costume and fight crime? They'd have to be crazy.
Yeah.
So I said, Jeff, they want a costume crime fighter. He says, well, I'm not going to waste these pages. And I said, okay, fine. We'll open with those, and then we'll bring in the costume crime fighter. And that's how Badger met Ham.
Nice. Wow, that is a pretty wild story. But what an interesting, creative solution. The artist doesn't want to lose those pages, and you just figured out a way to work it into the story.
Right, and it worked out because Ham's an integral part of the story now. He's been there forever.
Nice. That's so cool. Working with artists, what's the collaboration like? I'm sure it's different with each creator that you work with.
Well, it depends. Working with Steve Rude for 20 years, I would draw those each issue out by hand. He'd take them home and he'd do little thumbnails in the margin, and then we'd get together and go over them, and then he'd proceed to the finished work.
Okay.
And cool. A lot of other artists that I worked with on Nexus, like Paul Smith and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, I did the same. I drew each page out by hand, and they went directly to the finished page from that.
Oh, wow.
But they stuck to the script, so there was never any problem.
Okay. Nice.
These days, I write a script in script format for a number of reasons. And one is that if you're not trained to draw, you may mess up your back. Okay. I messed up my back because I was drawing on a horizontal surface all the time. And I have found that I can write scripts that are just as lucid and visual as the drawings I did. And I have to do a drawing, I will. I
Okay.
can still do that for somebody who wants to know the specifics, especially of fight choreography, which is very important in any of my book that involves fighting.
Okay.
Because I try to portray martial arts in a realistic and dynamic and entertaining manner so that you see it unfold before you in a way that you say, wow, this
Yeah.
could happen. And not only could it happen, but I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
Like a good kung fu movie, like Bruce Lee did, but especially the Donnie Yen Yip Man movies, which I
Right.
consider the best kung fu movies ever made. And some of the martial arts we did, well, of course, they're all over Badger and The Punisher. And we did a Bruce Lee series that Vail Myerick illustrated for Malibu.
Oh, cool.
And I did a Kato series for Now. And we're about to launch a book called Private American, which is going to have a lot of martial arts in it.
Nice. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, yeah, that is something that is pretty interesting with martial arts. You see it so much in the films. The accuracies, the inaccuracies, but also depicting it. In such a conveyance in comics, and trying to be true to the art form of martial arts, and the style and the culture, is something that a lot of readers, I don't think, including myself, don't necessarily think about.
And it's a different thing in a comic. In many ways, it's better because you watch a Jason Bourne film,
Right.
and Jason Bourne's, it happens so fast. It's intricately choreographed and it's based in reality.
Right.
But it happens so fast, you really don't see what happened.
Right.
The beauty of the comic is it's a series of frozen images, and you do see what happens. You see the technique unfold, and you understand how it happened.
Yeah.
And it's not just blows; it's things like joint locks and takedowns that involve leverage and specific grips, and that's the kind of thing we like to show.
Yeah, a lot of that can be a tremendous storytelling device depicting that action. There's in those quick little moments, so much nuance and subtext can happen. Mm. Kind of changing subjects. Going to uh, you know some of your horror books. You recently, in the last couple of years, came out with the novel Banshee. Let me bring up a graphic of that. Um, can you tell us, or Banshees, I should say? Can you tell us a little bit about what this book is about? Because this inspires, for me, like 1970s, Kiss versus the Phantoms of the Park, and
Well, there's certainly heavy metal bands and satanic rock bands had a bearing on it. It's about a satanic rock band that comes back from the dead. Cool. It's my biggest novel, and it was during while I was writing this novel. Mm-hmm. I realized about a third of the way through it that I understood story and I saw everything where it was going, and I said, "Holy shit! I've got it. I get it. I know what constitutes a novel, and I know how to write them." Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review. It's my biggest novel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there it is. And everybody's read it. It loves it. You cannot put it down. It's so ceaselessly inventive and shocking. I'm very proud of it. It's one of my best novels.
Nice. Yeah. What was the initial idea that kind of drove you down this prose road? Kind of transitioning from the comic book script to something novel form.
I always wanted to write novels.
Okay.
That was my goal. But as I said, it took me a long time to learn how to write them, to understand the form. But that's because I'm a slow learner. And there was a period there of about 10 years when I couldn't get any work writing, nothing.
Okay.
And I took any job I could.
Okay.
Because I had an ill wife to support. I was a janitor. I unloaded automobile bumpers.
Oh, wow.
But I always wanted to write. It was always in the back of my mind. And I think that 10-year hiatus helped me in a way because when I returned to the novel form and took another stab at it, as I said, I realized that I had it, that I understood it. And what that means is I understand what constitutes story. Because as every young writer knows, you'll start writing something and you'll get off on a tangent. You say, wow, that's really good writing, but it doesn't advance the story.
Okay.
So you have to understand what constitutes story and stick to that. But that doesn't mean it's a real narrow corridor. It can encompass a million things. You look at somebody like Michael Chabon, who wrote The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Yeah.
And his books are very wide ranging, very wide ranging. Somebody like Michener, of course, Michener has a roadmap. It's history, but he creates his own characters and he brings them alive to explain history.
Interesting. Okay.
My own taste in fiction runs to crime fiction. I like Robert Cray and Randy Wayne White. And of course, John D. MacDonald, his Travis McGee series is the reason I'm writing today. And it's also the reason that many other novelists are writing today.
Nice. Wow.
One of the greatest pulp writers of all time. And Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett. These guys are my gods, you know. And I should mention that I do write crime fiction. I have a series. And my series was inspired by John D. MacDonald and Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, but it's unique in a way. It's called Biker.
Nice. Okay.
And it's about a reformed motorcycle hoodlum, Josh Pratt, who goes to prison and finds God in prison.
Oh, interesting.
And when he comes out, he's determined to turn his life around. These books are brutal.
Yeah.
But you can't put them down. I mean, I'm very gratified with the response I'm getting. I'm working on the 10th novel right now, but I had to take time off because I've been working on so many other projects, but I will get back to it.
That's fantastic. Now with something like Banshees, it's more of a, the horror genre.
Yes.
For you, writing, transitioning from crime genre to horror genre, is there much of a difference for you, or is it?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, whenever I write, there are certain things that remain the same. You have to create a character with whom the reader can identify, for whom the reader can root. You have to have a moral balance.
Yeah.
There's a book about it called On Moral Fiction by John Gardner. And it says that in the end, evil must be punished and good rewarded. That doesn't always happen because good sometimes dies at the end. And you think of the end as Spartacus. When Spartacus is hanging on a cross and his wife goes by and holds up his baby son to indicate the hope in the future.
Yeah.
But he doesn't survive that story, but it fulfills the requirements of moral fiction. But the difference between crime and horror is that in horror, you try to create a world where the reader believes in the supernatural and believes that there's something lurking just off stage that's monstrous and implacable, and that the greatest achievement in horror fiction is to make the reader believe that and fear the unknown.
Right.
And I'm not talking about slasher movies or stories. I don't like those. I don't think they touch the supernatural. They may have a supernatural element, like Halloween.
Right.
We don't know what keeps that guy going. But the best supernatural lays an icy finger on your spine. And I'm thinking of movies like The Exorcist.
Right. Yeah.
Or, The Ring.
Yep. That's pretty unnerving.
What other great horror movies are there? There's The Changeling, starring George C. Scott, one of the greatest ghost stories ever told.
I remember that. Supposedly that was loosely based off of a location here in Denver.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We all know that The Shining was based on the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, and
Yep.
they're sure cashing in. I mean, they have their shining nights and celebrations. When I say
Oh, yeah.
shining nights, I don't mean shining knights in armor. I mean nights where you go there to experience a frisson of terror.
Yep. Yep. No, it's fun that pop culture in that sense, can really connect so many people like that. Go to these locations that these films and these books are based off of, and just try and live in that the the haunted horror, or the fantasy of it. But yeah, it's yeah, horror is such an interesting thing, to write. Do you find it's a tough genre to tackle, or is it just fun? You're playing in the sandbox.
Well, when you know where you're going and you know what happens next,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's great because that's the essential question in all fiction: what happens next?
Right.
And the reader has to care before he'll turn the page. But for me, the challenge with horror is finding a unique angle. I don't want to regurgitate what other writers have done. And I'm very proud that I think my books are unique. The book about the Banshees, a satanic rock band that comes back from the dead. I mean, you won't believe it until you read it.
Yeah.
Or Skorpio.
Right.
And the idea for Skorpio came about a ghost who only appears under a blazing sun.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a more personal story, but it's highly effective, and you won't be able to put it down, and it'll scare the shit out of you. And the new one that Wordfire Press is bringing out, Domain, is the ultimate haunted house story. And the reason I wrote it is because I wanted to write a haunted house story. And this also ties in with my fascination of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh, the architect.
In a way, it was inspired by Wright's own life because he had a situation at Taliesin where he had a deranged servant who locked everybody in the dining hall. It had a Dutch door. It was the only exit. That means it was split in two. And he set the building on fire, and he waited outside with a sledgehammer. And as the people crawled out one by one, he killed them with the sledgehammer. It's a true story.
Right.
And the first fruit of that was my graphic novel, The Architect.
Okay.
And I created this character based on Wright called Rourke Dexter Smith. Mm-hmm. The Architect is available, by the way. It's on Amazon, and you can get it from me. I should have brought a copy up. But it's based on a premise you've never seen before that'll blow your mind. And that's one of the things that I'm always looking for is something fresh, something unique, something that hasn't been done before. No werewolves, no vampires, no zombies, something totally fresh.
Yeah.
But the premise behind The Architect is based on real science, and it's a scientific principle that most people have never heard of. But when you understand what it is, it'll blow your mind. But Rourke Dexter Smith lives on in Domain.
Okay.
Because he's the architect of the house that's at the center of the story. The house is a real house.
Yeah.
It's called Sowden House. And it's in Los Angeles.
Ooh, okay.
And it was designed by Lloyd Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright's son, who in many ways is a more exciting architect than his father. And I would encourage anybody who's watching to Google Sowden House and take a look at the pictures. Sowden, Sowden House in Los Angeles.
Nice.
It'll freak you out. And one of the reasons I wrote it was because of a book called Black Dahlia Avenger, which was written by a police detective. He was a 30-year detective for Los Angeles police. And he realized that his father was the murderer of the Black Dahlia, and they lived in Sowden House, and that's where the murder took place.
Right.
So that inspired me to write that book, although the book has nothing to do with the Black Dahlia, but it has a great deal to do with the house.
Yeah. Setting up such a location, gives itself so many opportunities to do all kinds of different stories, right?
Yeah, I think haunted houses fascinate us all. I mean, when
Yeah.
you think of all the stories that are based on haunted houses, Stephen King wrote one called, I think, Black House. It was called Black House. He
Okay.
wrote that with that guy from Milwaukee whose name escapes me. But anyhow, it was a play on Bleak House.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's not King's best book, but The Shining is probably his best book, and he nails it there. You know, the
Yeah.
isolation.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Yeah. The psychology of it, as well as, there's those haunted elements, of the location,
There's another haunted house story I'd like to recommend. It's called The Elementals by Michael McDowell,
Okay.
and that'll
Oh,
creep you out.
nice. Pretty unnerving, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely unnerving. Exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's no gore, but you are terrified to turn the page.
That's fantastic. That's you get that sense in only like a few films, like we were talking about. But I think it's so much better when it comes from a book, because it's
I
all
agree.
in here.
I
Nothing.
keep saying comics are the worst medium for horror. Well, we love them and we keep doing them. I mean, I keep doing them. And
Yeah.
the reason they're the worst medium is because of the medium itself. It's just a comic book.
Right.
You turn the page and there's the werewolf.
Sure.
And the drawing is really scary. It's one of the greatest werewolves you've ever seen. But you're aware that it's the work of an artist with a pen.
Yeah.
And when you come to that full page reveal of the werewolf, not only do you see the werewolf and admire the werewolf, but the story stops dead because it's a single image.
Okay.
And you want to know what happens next, so you will turn the page. But I very rarely devote a single page to a single image unless it's important. And in my mind, I would rather do it on the discovery of a lost city. That's worthy of a full page, because
Right.
when you look at like Machu Picchu, an aerial picture of Machu Picchu, that's worthy of a full page.
Yeah.
But novels and movies are the best medium for horror. The novel, because a skilled writer can paint a picture that's absolutely real. It will cause you to completely shut out your surroundings and concentrate solely on the story. But movies are different. They have an added advantage. They control the pacing, the lighting, and most people don't think about this, but it's the most important of all, the sound.
True. The soundscape is dreadfully important.
And anybody who's seen The Haunting, that black and white movie from the 60s, the original, there's not a monster in it. There's no gore in it, but the sounds in it will scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, so some of the films that I go to, like the original, even before Halloween, is like something like Texas Chainsaw. So many people are like, oh, that movie's so gory. There's no gore in it. It just creates an environment and a feeling, and it's got a tremendous soundscape. It's absolutely unnerving. It's one of my favorite films, and it gives me nightmares every time I see it.
I've never seen it. I may have to watch it.
I highly recommend it. And I would just watch the first one. After that, it just becomes campy or gory.
Okay.
And
that's so often the case. There is an exception to that rule. It's Exorcist 3.
That's true. There are some scenes in there that are just amazing.
It's almost as good as The Exorcist.
Yeah, it is.
It may be as good as The Exorcist.
Nice. Yeah, it is. For me, it's a fun film to sit through. That
also stars George C. Scott.
Yep. Oh man, and there's a lot of wonderful character actors in that as well.
Jason Miller.
Jason Miller, the gentleman that he's been in a couple David Lynch movies. I forget why I'm not doing it justice. Damn it.
Let's find out.
Yeah. While we're doing that, Abram just chimed in. He said The Architect is a great book.
Thanks, Abe.
He's a big fan.
Brad Dourif. Brad
Yeah.
Dourif is so brilliant in so many movies.
Yes. Oh,
Ed
yeah.
Flanders is part of the William Peter Blatty ensemble.
Right.
Scott Wilson,
Oh, man.
who's so great in the Bosch series.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Man, it's a great cast in Exorcist 3.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
And I love it when he's talking about his mother's over and his wife has this carp in the bathtub that she's planning to cook for dinner, and the carp swims up and the carp swims down.
There's an amazing jump scare where I think a nurse walks on camera.
Yeah.
That right there is just a good, encapsulation, I think, of that whole movie.
Yeah.
Just that moment. It's absolutely classic. Earlier before we went on, we were talking about another example, the movie Alien, kind of a sci-fi, horror.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah. And it's perfectly intense, and also has that isolation, feeling, but also, the characters, the crew in there, it feels so tangible and relatable as well.
Yeah, well, that's important. As I said, you have to have characters with whom the audience can identify.
Yeah, and going back to films. Yeah, nowadays it seems like so many horror movies, and there's so many of them too that really kind of
Yeah, because people will go see them, no matter how awful they are. There's a market for them.
Oh yeah, very much so. I think that's something that kind of frustrates me as a viewer is I want to root for the people, whether they end up getting killed at the end or anything like that. But I definitely want to be able to relate to them and stuff. And now in the last 20 years, you've had stuff like torture porn where everybody on screen is just awful people, and it's like, yeah, I could care less.
Splice was pretty good. Did you see Splice?
I did. That's with the group that the two scientists that came together and developed a new creature in the lab, and very humanoid, and the boundaries really went really got gray, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how their relationship was. That was a good drama too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. The with the talk of doing books, novels, and comic books, and we know you're working on quite a few other projects coming up. Have you ever considered writing a screenplay?
What am I going to do? Write another screenplay on spec and toss it into the whirlpool of Hollywood? Well, they've had screenplays out there. I mean, they're not lacking for any screenplays. I'm going to continue to do what I do. And if a producer takes an interest in it, he can option the property. Now, a producer has optioned Biker.
Oh, cool.
And we are talking about a couple of other properties, so keep your fingers crossed.
Ooh, that's nice. That's pretty juicy. I love it. That's cool.
Nothing's real till you get a check.
That is true. That's very true. You got to kind of manage your expectations on stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty exciting. Is something like Banshees or Skorpio being considered?
No, I haven't had any nibbles on that. But the guy who bought Biker, he's pretty determined. And I think Biker is well, no, they're all commercial. They're all really commercial, but so are a million other books out there. I have no idea how anything gets done in Hollywood. I don't think anybody does. It gets done.
Yeah.
Somebody with a lot of money says, "Okay, we're going to do it."
Right. Right.
Look at that Batgirl movie that they just deep sixed. Do you know about that?
Yeah, I just heard about that yesterday. That in reshuffling in the Warner Brother world, they axed that. Sounds like the Flash is on the chopping block, uh, all to for a tax write-off. It seems like to manage their debt.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that they realized it probably wasn't a very good movie and it would never earn back its nut. And that's the problem.
and that could be that could certainly be the case. I also feel bad for all the creative people that worked on it, and
Sure.
that project will never see the light of day, and then we can't judge it as fans.
Somebody's going to pirate it. It'll get out.
True. Well, look at what they did with the Corman Fantastic Four movie. Yeah, you can go on YouTube and watch it, but it was never
Oh, I didn't
released.
know. Right.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, with projects like Nexus and Badger, and I'm off camera. You were mentioning how you're developing new projects for Nexus and stuff. Have you ever thought about and we did talk a little bit about your novels being adapted for film. But has anybody probably approached you about adapting those, since the superhero genre is in the pop culture lexicon?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I have groups interested in both properties, but as I said, nothing's real until I get a check.
Yeah.
But these groups are very determined, and they're two completely separate entities that are both very interested in bringing Nexus and Badger to the screen.
Cool.
But when we're talking about horror and comics, I should mention that I'm working on a supernatural Western with Pat Broderick, and it's the greatest work of his career.
Nice.
It's going to blow your mind. It's called Bronze Star.
Okay.
And Pat's about halfway through it, and we're going to launch it towards the end of the year.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'll probably have some art to show down in Colorado Springs.
Oh, cool.
Thank you, Abe. Yeah. Are you going to be in Colorado Springs?
I won't. I think I am in Seattle that weekend for a wedding. So that this next month I am off either painting murals or I am in weddings apparently.
You're much in demand as the best man.
I think I just got a strong back, so I'm a good lifter for putting together wedding parties. That's all I'm good for.
Well, Pat Broderick is going to be in Colorado Springs, and
cool.
So we're going to be together, and Pat's going to have art to show.
Nice. Yeah, his work is so incredibly detailed, and I remember I was first introduced to his work, and I think it was in the early or mid '90s with Doom 2099. That was a book that always stood out for me for his work, for his early work anyway. And I saw you guys were working together on some projects, so it'll be pretty cool. Can you tell us a little bit about Bronze Star, what that's about?
It's about a former Confederate soldier who turns into supplying meat for the army as a hunter in the West, and he gets in a poker game with a card sharp who draws on him, and he kills the card sharp. But it turns out that the card sharp's father is a very powerful landowner who gets up a posse. So Harley is forced to flee. He flees the country, he goes north. And he ends up in a tiny little town called Cobb's Gap at the foot of the Rocky Mountains, which has a played out silver mine in it. And nobody ever goes near the mine, and nobody will say why.
Yeah.
And they say, don't go near the mine. Also, Cobb's Gap is very peaceful after dark.
Yeah.
Very peaceful. And the reason is that the sheriff is a werewolf.
Oh.
But that's not the main element of the story, and it's not the main supernatural element. It is an element.
Right.
And it makes for, I'm very proud of these characters. They're both fascinating characters. You're going to love them.
Nice.
But those are the basic elements. I can't give anything. I can't give any more away.
That sounds outstanding. Yeah, it sounds like you're creating a really rich world too.
Yeah, it is rich. Yeah, and that's one thing is I try to make these stories as credible as possible to be the kind of story that I would like to consume, which means the dialogue is real.
Yeah.
Everything you see is proceeds out of the elements that have gone before. There's not a wasted panel. There's not a wasted word.
Yeah.
And the ending comes as both a complete surprise and, in retrospect, inevitable. And that, to me, is the best ending.
Nice. Wow, that's that sounds like it's going to be really cool and thorough. The kind of going back to some of your creative process. When you sit down to write, like, is it very structured in that, do you block out a set amount of time and just kind of discipline through it, or is it you just kind of write whenever the mood strikes you?
Oh, no, you got to write every day. And,
Yeah.
I have not been. I'm working on stuff every day, but I haven't been writing my own novels because I've been working on all this other stuff. And I hope to get back to them soon. They beckon. I do finish. I finish everything eventually. But I'm not like some of my friends who have amazing discipline, like Kevin J. Anderson. Kevin publishes easily 500,000 words a year. He writes these huge star-spanning epics. He writes the Dune novels. You should point out that Kevin is the publisher of Banshees, Skorpio, and Domain. His publishing firm, Wordfire Press.
Nice.
And then I have a friend named Peter Brandvold who writes Westerns, and Pete publishes 6 novels a year. And he sits down and he writes 2,000 words a day, come hell or high water.
Oh my gosh.
And I write, I try to do at least 1,000 words per chapter. Chapters at least 1,000 words, usually a little more.
Okay.
And I won't write a chapter that's less. And if I'm really on fire, I'll write 2 or 3 chapters a day. But that rarely happens because I'm working on other stuff. I'm working on comics, but I used to just sit down and wing it. But now I'm a firm believer in outlines. And for people who are interested in my method, when I get an idea for a story, I get a notepad and I start writing down everything about the story, including the characters, the premise, the settings, names. I just make all sorts of notes, and gradually, bit by bit, they reach a critical mass, at what point I can see the story, and that's when I write an outline.
Okay.
And the outlines are often fairly detailed, but they're not like who wrote The Pillars of the Earth? It's great. Frederick Forsyth. They're not like a Frederick Forsyth outline, which is 100 pages long, or a James Michener outline. They're like, they may get 10 or 12 pages. And once you start writing, invariably, you're going to deviate from the outline. It just happens when the story takes on a life of its own, because you're going to think of new stuff.
Yeah.
That will enrich the story, and you gotta follow it. If you believe in it, and you're gonna know it's real when you say, "Ooh, yeah,"
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's and that's also great advice, for any up and coming writers too. We've got just a few more minutes, Mike. One last question I've got for you is, what project have you not tackled that you want to tackle?
Well, I'm working on all those projects. I've started a new Florida Man novel.
Right.
And I've started a new biker novel.
Oh, cool.
But right now I'm making notes for the next Thin Blue Line graphic novel.
Right.
The response to the first one was so great, we feel obligated to do another one.
Okay, cool. And I think that one's, you're going to be coming out with that at the end of the year, right?
Oh, no, that'll be next year before Thin Blue Line appears again. We do have this oversized artist black and white edition we're very pleased with.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
that's gorgeous black and white illustrations. Man, that's cool. So yeah, constantly working on stuff. Mike, I want to say, thanks for coming on
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
and chatting with us. For everybody that's out there that's interested in following, Mike's work, yeah, his website is bloodyredbaron.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Bloody Red Baron, and then you've got MikeBaron.substack.com as well.
It should be Mike Baron, Mike.
Oh shoot, I'm sorry, Mike Baron.
Yeah, but most importantly, if you go to Amazon and just type in Mike Baron, you'll get all my stuff.
Yeah, you've got a pretty big Wikipedia page, I think, too, that pops up, right when you Google you.
I have nothing to do with that.
No, Mike, it was great being able to chat with you and learn more about your creative process and all the cool stuff that you've gave the world.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, and stick around for a few minutes while we sign off. But I want to say, thanks for everybody for tuning in, and of course to all our friends that help sponsor the show, to Mutiny Cafe. If you're going to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated. And our friends at Hellfire Entertainment, thanks for rebroadcasting us on your social media, and of course Groovy TV and Alien Donut Films, to Bill and Angela over there, and our producers Stefan Santa Cruz and Amanda Armstrong. And for everybody that's out there tuning in, thanks so much for all your help and support. And be good, be kind, help each other out during these tough times, and stay spooky, everybody. Have a good night. We'll